Hello. It's Music 4. We're back. Sorry, I'm late. We got a fun one. Today we're talking about how music relates to sacred geometry. Which of course has to do with math and all those kinds of things. Which we won't delve too deep into, but we will discuss a lot of topics and a lot of pathways to go down. Some questions I have, some things I've been interested in. And then we'll listen to music that some is said specifically to shape your cells in certain ways and create shapes in matter, kind of transform matter through vibration, which has to do with what we talked about last time, and it all kind of overlaps. But I wanted to delve a little more deeply into a couple of the topics that we touched on, mainly cymatics, which is that thing that happens when, let's say, you have a piece of metal with some sand on it, and you put a tone into the metal, and it arranges the sand in like a mandala or a sacred shape. So yeah, it's kind of what we're on today, and I'm gonna go through my notes and see what we can find. But for now, behind my talking, I think we'll go with some raga. Rag Alam Bhairav by Ali Akbar Khan. By the way, you're listening to Music 4 on Miami Community Radio, focused on the utility of sound, the history of that utility, and how it's manifesting in the modern world. Today's topic, sacred geometry. My research journey started in a place where Buddhist tradition was touched on, Buddhist shapes and meaning for those shapes was touched on in my early readings. Something that I found interesting is that it said that structures such as the pagoda, which is a building, to my knowledge, and they say literally the pagoda is the Buddha, and that the building is the Buddha. And this is the same for pretty much everything. And you guys can correct me, but basically, from my understanding, saying that this idea of God or a higher power or Buddha is all around us, everything. And I found that to be very interesting. This idea of like a perfect structure, such as the pagoda, where everything is so symmetrical, being described as the Buddha. I thought that was very cool, and it kind of felt like it related to how I was feeling about shapes and the way that vibrations can make shapes, and how the vibration of the universe possibly has made us all into the shape that we are, right? And this the way that matter is manifesting, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, they use a circle to express the heavens. There's a triangle, which touches on the each side as the knower, the known, and the act of knowing. And then there's a kind of flow between those things. And then Earth being described as a square, which was cool. So I started there, and I was kind of interested on these like metaphysical definitions of shape, and how they're not really talking about matter, but they're using shapes that we know in matter to talk about things that we can't see and describe things that we can't see. And if you believe that these Buddhist traditions or Hermetic knowledge even before that, or anything like that, if you believe in these things to be true, I personally do, because they resonate with me. It makes me feel good, and I don't know how to think about things in any other way. So if you believe in these things, you'll notice in all their art, or in a lot of mandalas, which are these very intricate drawings, there's all sorts of shapes that are recognizable, and these things are expressing mood. They're expressing vibration through the drawing itself. And it's shown in many experiments by some great scientists that we'll talk about later. That the vibrations of certain tones are making the same structures happen in the sand. The same mandala structures are being found when we vibrate sand itself. Which is kind of interesting. So maybe they had some knowledge that we don't have now, or something like that. But I'll touch on a couple of things here from the first article that I was reading. And all of creation is a matrix of singing frequencies, which can be experienced as color, light, and sound. Matter is patterned by sound, and even states of consciousness and so-called non-matter are affected by it. A name comes up early in the research of Cymatics, Hans Jenny. He's one of the first that projected pure tones onto fine grains of matter or liquid and observed the forming of distinct geometric shapes. He defined this sound-matter connection as cymatics. So that's what we've been talking about, is this idea of kind of like... I might be able to show it on the screen. So the sound is affecting the matter in these ways, and it's shaping the sand into things that are almost like snowflakes. They're unique, but highly intricate and defined. What we're seeing is a physical representation of vibration, or how sound manifests into form through the medium of various materials. Okay? So these are making shapes that feel recognizable, but are also foreign. It feels like when you go down to the smallest forms of matter, these are the kinds of things you're seeing. You're seeing these representations of details that are organic. You know, you might see them in a leaf or in places like that. This relationship of sound and matter is at the core of an exciting revival of ancient sound science, which is based on timeless principles well known to all ancient and indigenous cultures. Billy Yellow, a Navajo medicine man, summed it all up with this wisdom. Our task is to chant the world, chant beauty. The world is a reflection of our chanting. And we know probably what chanting is if you are alive. It's that repeated, unified expression of words or sounds, usually in group. In a group setting, it's the most powerful. And you can feel it. I was just at the beach yesterday, and I was chanting to myself while the sun set, and just kind of going back and forth, foot to foot, switching foot. Doing it for myself in my ears, so that way I could heal inside my ears and my neck and send good vibrations into all over. And it's kind of what you see in a lot of indigenous and native and ancient cultures. This movement, repeated movement, and sound. And so we're talking about geometry today, specifically. But this translates into everything, because everything is numbers or math at the end of the day. So numbers is shapes, and these things all are connected. And so it feels like when you're chanting to yourself, or you're chanting in a group, and you're expressing these tones and these pitches, this can, I feel, is arranging the structures of our cells just like we arrange the structures of the sand. Right? It's intuitive. We already know. Some talk of some Greek guys who, after ancient cultures had figured this out, there's a couple of Greek philosophers that were taught this knowledge. Pythagoras being a really important one. Plato as well. Plato believed that the strongest of all life's influences is music. Plato describes the numerical, parentheses, vibrational and musical creation of the physical universe and the soul, which animates it. He called his students to activate the ancient shrines and sacred temples of the earth with sacred song, employing, quote, perpetual choirs in order to echo the harmonies of the heavenly choir. So again, it feels like when we're filling the air with these vibrations, we're aligning possibly the chakras of the planet itself. We're aligning the shape. We're bolstering a healthy shape in ourselves, and then expanded family structure, and then expanded community. We're bolstering the healthy, positive, beautiful, mandala-like structures within our body, within our mind, and our spirit. And it feels so good. So, some of these Greek cats, they got, well, mainly Pythagoras. Let's touch on Pythagoras a little bit here. So he got his knowledge from Babylon, Egypt. It was taught to him at one point. He obtained it somehow. It seems as if he was a positive spreader of this knowledge and wanted to grow it into something beautiful and strong. But a lot of this, when he comes into play, it feels like his knowledge from himself really starts to bolster this whole idea of the math and the shapes and how it all intertwines into the sound and the music and the frequencies and the vibrations. He said, music is a mortal law. It gives soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and charm and gaiety to life and to everything. You think about the sand on the metal plate being ready to be vibrated by the tones that they were putting into it. It's like in disarray. It has no shape. The sand is placed just as it was thrown. And then when the tone comes in, it sharply forms into a gorgeous shape that feels even like medicine on your eyes. It's shifting consciousness and getting deeper into sublime energetic states. They said music governs all temporal cycles. sacred science of numbers, geometry, and math. The seed of this whole idea to discuss this was from seeing the Cymatics shapes that were formed, or that are formed, seeing examples of those shapes, and then being interested to know could the shape be reverse engineered in a way that if we know this tone makes this shape, can we then maybe make the shape to find the tone? And if we know what shape we might need to make to heal something, or create a certain energy, could we reverse it? Could we go from shape to tone instead of tone to shape? So that was kind of my question initially, of like, this is interesting. Like, how could it be applied now? How could it help people now? Because I know they're working on it. There's a lot of things that are happening that I see online when I'm looking around. But sometimes it feels like it's influenced by monetary gain, or something just feels a little disconnected about how I'm seeing these sciences applied. But it's only the beginning, and I see a lot of individuals and groups coming together to amplify these teachings and amplify the truth. Seemingly, it feels true. Pythagoras also said, there's geometry in the humming of the strings, music in the spacing of the spheres. From my interpretation, he was talking about the spacing of the planets, but I'm not entirely sure, because they do talk about tones coming from the planets themselves, and each planet having a tone, which is very cool. Discuss a little bit more on that soon. But astrology plays a huge role in this too. So what Pythagoras ended up figuring out, at the beginning of his experiments and things like that, he took a string, like an instrument string, and had it stretched out, and then it would create a certain pitch, right, when it's stretched, okay? And then he split that string in half and created the point of tension in the middle. So instead of the string being, let's say, a foot long, they made it more of like a 6-inch string. And so what they found was that that 6-inch string would be an octave above what the 12-foot string was. Okay, I'll say that again just to make it clear. It's like, let's say you have the 12-inch string, okay, the foot-long string, and it makes a low E. I don't know, I don't have perfect pitch, but we'll just make a tone. So like, ooh, ooh. Okay, so that's what that length would make. And then when they made it into 6 inches, okay, exactly half, it's 1 octave up. Exactly 1 octave. And I started talking about that, like, you know, everybody knows music, simple music stuff, but it's not everybody does. So 1 octave, 12 steps above, same note, higher pitch, which is very interesting. So you're starting to touch on these kinds of, like, we're getting into the reality of the shapes and the numbers and things like that. As soon as he figured that out, I was like, okay, well, that's crazy. Like, you divide this number by 2, and you're getting a pitch that's the exact same 1 octave up. It's very related and kind of, like, interesting. They have numerical ratios. So an octave has a ratio of 2 to 1. So all those words I used to describe all that, that's basically what I was trying to say. An octave has a ratio of 2 to 1. The pitch depends on the string length. All is number. Divine. At this time they were saying number is an expression of God's mind. And numbers give way to geometric forms. Cue up something for next track. So these numbers and these geometric forms, they all relate to the golden ratio. I'm just getting the specific definition here so I can tell you guys what it is. The golden ratio, also known as the golden number, golden proportion, or the divine proportion, is a ratio between two numbers that equals approximately 1.618. Usually written as the Greek letter phi, it is strongly associated with the Fibonacci sequence, a series of numbers wherein each number is added to the last. So this is just kind of like a very sacred finding about our universe by Fibonacci that seems to make sense of all the randomness that we see, that it's all related and has a certain divine correlation. don't know if I've played this before, but it doesn't matter. Rainbow and Curved Light by Terry Riley. So then after looking at things like this, like the golden ratio, how it relates to this idea of the octave and these things that just start to make sense mathematically when looking at sound. And the pentagram comes up, which then brings us to the golden rectangle. A golden rectangle is a rectangle that can be cut up into a square and a rectangle similar to the original one. How does this relate to sound? So we can explain the relation between these two topics by touching on this idea of cosmic proportions. Something that Kepler used to talk about, a scientist. And the proportions of everything in the universe and the different sizes and shapes and how everything works together. And this idea of harmony, okay? Musical harmony being distances of notes, and then this idea of physical harmony being distances of objects or energies. So there's a certain musicality to all of this. It's all really kind of like the same thing. They're all one thing. Because the distance between waves and a sound wave creates a higher or lower tone. Right? So all of it intertwines in so many ways. When I got into this, I just scratched the surface. Realistically, I didn't realize how deep it would go. But I'm excited by it because there's so much to look at. I highly recommend everybody look into all this stuff themselves as well. I could get stuff wrong. I might, could touch on things not enough or any kinds of stuff. But The purpose of this show and conversation is to open up the conversation, to get the ideas flowing and out and get us thinking about them and feeling good and trusting that we might have an idea intuitively about what we need for our bodies and our minds, because it seems like a lot of things that are given to us by the powers that be might not resonate so deeply. But this stuff really resonates. In a few minutes, once I go over all my notes here, I will play that music that I was saying I think puts us into beautiful shapes. Till 7. So, something else that I was coming upon here was the work of some specific knights, Knights Templar. So they obtained some ancient knowledge as well. And I couldn't really figure out, like, if they obtained it through, like, bad methods or not, but we'll just kind of leave that be, because what we're talking about is how they applied it and how it relates to the sciences we're discussing. We're not really talking about whether what they built was good or bad. These knights, they were involved in building Gothic cathedrals such as Notre Dame, Salisbury, St. Denis, and Cluny. And these cathedrals were constructed using the principles of sacred geometry, creating perfect harmonic acoustics for the transforming potential. And so in these cathedrals, the way that the sound bounces, the acoustics of the rooms, of the main halls, is perfect. And so they were using sacred ancient teachings, maybe in a sort of like from some a similar kind of what they, the hidden knowledge. They were using this hidden knowledge to build these structures that would amplify and have a higher levels of resonance in the cathedral based on the shape of the cathedral. So this is very advanced understanding of sound and kind of why they had their own reasons for why they would want to amplify this sound. And it kind of leaned in sort of a Christian sort of way, or Catholic. And so it feels like it was like ancient knowledge that was there from maybe like over 40,000 years ago, and then obtained by these guys, these knights, and so they used it for their purposes. That's what I understand. But it is some of the only kind of evidence that we have for these teachings and knowledge being applied to actual structures. There's a few places around the world where it still goes down today. I know of one specifically that I don't even know if I think it's still active in Joshua Tree that is like amplifies its sound in a really big way, and they do sound baths and things like that in there. Highly powerful. Okay. Just checking if there's anything else important here. Okay, really important stuff here. The music of atomic solids. 5 basic 3-dimensional geometric forms are found to represent the 5 elements of creation. The tetrahedron, fire, the cube, earth, the octahedron, air, and the dodecahedron, ether, and the icosahedron, water. These 5 platonic solids comprise the constantly changing dance of creation. In bringing order to the universe, the Creator gave geometric forms to the atoms, interacting with human senses to produce appearance and feelings. Came across this individual named Michael Helios, and here's some words about his early research. His pioneering research in music, mathematical proportions, astronomy, and healing became the area of study in sound healing during the early 1990s. Helios had discovered the musical proportions and corresponding tone scales of each of the platonic shapes, which included tuning his keyboard to specific frequencies to achieve the exact proportions. So, seemingly this gentleman, Helios, Michael Helios, he did exactly what I was talking about, but for these 5 shapes. Kind of like reverse engineering and getting the tone, the frequency, should I say, of these exact proportions. Really interesting. During his presentations, Michael would play the scales and geometries of each platonic shape, and the participants would meditate on the 5 different musical pieces, without disclosing which geometric shape he was playing. After each piece, the listeners would describe which of the shapes they experienced. And in an extraordinary event, every platonic solid was directly perceived, felt, and seen with the inner eye during each of the 5 musical meditations. So these pieces are being played. Individuals are meditating while the pieces are being played, and then after, when they're being asked about what shapes they saw in their mind's eye, or what shapes they felt and experienced. Through these experiments, they're saying that the individuals were able to tell what shapes were being played based only on the sound. It's said that the shape of the universe is a dodecahedron. This is based on the measurements of cosmic waves left over from the Big Bang. It's a theory. It seems the entire human race is joined in these same basic sacred proportions of the physical body as it is overlaid in a pentagram, with the arms and legs spread to make a 5-pointed star. 5 appendages from the human torso. 5 appendages on each leg and arm. 5 openings on the face. And 5 senses of physical perception. More links with the numbers, astrology, music. Oh. 1 second. If we can imagine the dodecahedral pentagonal shape of the universe. Oops, 1 sec, gotta get another song. As I was saying, if we can imagine the dodecahedral pentagonal shape of the universe, meaning one song, and see the human body pentagram geometry, we find in both a divine proportion and potential for harmonic perfection, which is inherent in physical embodiment and the harmony of spheres. We embody the geometry of the cosmos. And we find that the phi, the golden mean proportions of the cosmos in our body temples, are closely aligned with the musical intervals. The Fibonacci ratio is closest to a minor 6th chord, and also close to the harmonics created by a 5th interval. Or stated another way, the universe and humanity are geometries singing. That's a really good one. The universe and humanity are geometries singing. The fifth is the interval found in most sacred music and has a powerful harmonizing effect in the human energy system. The fifth is the first harmonic sounded by a plucked string and gives the note its depth and beauty. This musical geometry connection is well stated in the poet mystic's Goethe's phrase that, quote, sacred architecture or human body proportion is frozen music. So like we're talking about at the beginning, it's kind of like, it feels like we are these structures that, or everything is like these structures and matter that has been kind of like frozen. It's vibrations that are frozen. It's a little difficult to kind of like describe or conceive. I have some more notes about this that will make it make a little more sense. All of creation expresses itself through number, and number is frequency, manifest as color, sound, and form. And even as emotion and states of consciousness. The effects of harmonious design based on sacred portions can be experienced firsthand when one enters an ancient temple in Egypt or a Gothic cathedral. The effect can immediately be sensed as harmonious, powerful, and centering. Anybody that is blessed to the point of being able to enter such a structure, you know how awesome it is. And I hope that everybody can experience it one day, and that we have more sacred structures that are constructed based on this knowledge, open to the public and available all over the world. Being inside of a space designed with sacred proportions helps us to access other dimensions of consciousness. The most common proportions found in ancient Egyptian temple architecture correspond to the most harmonious intervals found in music: the octaves, fifths, fourths, thirds, and sixths. And these intervals, it just means spaces between two notes. So that's what they're describing when they talk about an octave, a fifth, a fourth, a third, a sixth. These are the spaces between the two notes. In the temple of Horus at Edfu, the dimensions of one chamber's measurements of width to height equaled 2 to 3, which defines an interval of a fifth in music. It's a quote from Antoine Sarand. So we're seeing the structures are built with these ratios and that directly correlate with intervals that we find in music. So we're building almost this physical structure that has ratios intertwined into its design. And then, surprise, surprise, the same tones and frequencies resonate in these structures at a high degree, to a point that almost overtakes your body and vibrates you to your core, right? The expansion and transformation experienced by being inside a sacred place can also be reached directly through listening to sacred music or, quote, aural geometry. It's like you're taking these shapes in through your ears, and they're altering the shape of your being. And I believe this for all music. I mean, I think that, I don't know if all music is sacred. I think I've talked about this before, but I think that all music can be sacred. So, it could be that, and any music that we like or that makes us feel good or that we resonate with could be shaping us at a cellular level into shapes that we like. So it's just another reason to trust your intuition and kind of follow what's leading you. Vedic chanting, Ravi Shankar. I'll let this one play out. Let's continue with a Dendra temple wall inscription in Egypt. So this is just on a wall in a temple in Egypt. It says, "The sky and its stars make music in you." The sky and its stars make music in you. The healing potential of the magical fifth and the natural harmonics of our beautiful earth hold a powerful key for bringing us back to a state of well-being. The ancients understood that if we live in harmony with the heavenly and earthly cycles and use those harmonic principles for our physical environment, we can be whole, healthy, and truly connected. Just spending time in nature puts us back in touch with the primordial harmonies that heal. So, it's funny that even though I thought that we were going to talk about, well, initially when I had the idea that for this to be this episode, that we were going to talk about some, I don't know, like the topic was going to be a little more different, or I think we would touch on something, but it's funny that it's just all kind of like overlaps and intertwines. It's all this big thing that feels good to me, so I wanted to share it with you. We're about a half hour out to the end of the show. I'm going to touch on a few more things, and then I'll just play out. Dr. Deepak Chopra has said, "The body is held together by sound. The presence of disease indicates that some sounds have gone out of tune." The perception range of our senses are connected to the frequency patterns of the brain. The goal is to activate the full spectrum of sounds for greater potential and wholeness. So we're almost vibrating our cells and our being and our soul, vibrating everything back into tune. Which I'm feeling right now, just by listening to all this sacred music. Just puts me there. I feel very thankful to share with you. I'm glad you're listening. So there's some science here by a gentleman, Dr. Alfred Tomatis, French ear and eye specialist. And he discovered about measuring frequency patterns in the ear and also analyzing the voice, regular speaking tones, combining those two data sets and deriving from them a kind of understanding of what to prescribe sonically um, for his patients. So that's kind of interesting that if you kind of measure these different parts of the body, that you can find what the body might need just based on like the tone of the voice. Each of us is a living symphony of frequencies, some of our notes singing in harmony and some singing off key. Because of stress, trauma, and negative mental and emotional patterns, the instruments of our symphony need tuning up. Some notes in our body-mind symphony have become so stressed that they are missing, which makes it more difficult for our orchestra, our whole energy system, to play. These missing tones can be identified by listening to the notes in our speaking voice with a digital tuner. These frequency patterns are also mirrored in the individual's planetary tone frequencies. By knowing the frequency of something, we can alter or change it. And when the missing frequencies are played back to the person, we integrate those sounds and return to wholeness, heal, and harmony. Hazrat Inyat Khan said, "The person who has found the keynote in their voice has found the key to life." This journey of researching this has kind of reignited a quest to find the best sources of these sounds and how to get closer to positively affecting my life and changing my life and healing myself through sound. And it feels difficult right now a little bit because sometimes it feels like Spotify isn't good enough, or YouTube isn't good enough, or is this good enough quality? Is it really changing me? I've heard that it doesn't do as much, and I want it to do the most. So I'm gonna keep searching. Maybe it has to do with synthesizers. Maybe we can use some, or it might, and probably has to do with some kind of, let's say, whatever we can do it with. I want to find a better way to do it, and maybe we can bring it to the public and just have somewhere where people can go. Like it could even be free. It shouldn't be expensive or hard to obtain. And this feels like what we need to feel better. If we're vibrating ourselves into place, and we're vibrating ourselves and could kill harmful cells or dangerous cells or damaged cells and remove them from our body. This is all possible. We'll talk a little bit about that in this last part. I wish I wrote this guy. I did write his name down. Okay. We'll touch on this a little bit. In our modern, high-tech digital world, we've lost much of these healing frequencies in our daily lives. Hours spent at computers, on cell phones, traveling in cars, planes at high speeds, living in structures that are most likely not designed with sacred architectural principles. We are removed from the natural harmonic environments that heal. Right? So that's what it's all about, returning back to our harmonious healing environment. And reshaping ourselves and our realities using frequency. And frequency, I think about it lately as like how often I'm doing something. If I'm doing something like the right amount of times, my frequency, my relation with it feels balanced. It feels tuned. And I find that to be really cool. And you can kind of sense when you're out of tune and you're kind of like your frequency, like let's say you're doing something too much, that's like a higher frequency. It's like instead of something that's like, oh, I did it today. Okay. And then I didn't do it for 2 days. And then I did it. And it's like, it's kind of like dance. I love that metaphor for life as this kind of like cosmic dance. It makes it sound more fun because when you're dancing, you're not so worried about what you're going to do next. You just do the move that feels the best. And that's awesome. All right, well, I think let's see if there's any stragglers here. 40,000 years ago, they found an Ice Age flute that had the same scale as we use, pretty much. Pretty incredible. We're shifting conscious and getting deeper into sublime energetic states. Music governs all temporal cycles. So, yeah, we touched on that. Temporal cycles, whether that be seasons, internal cycles, there's a musicality to all of it. Listen, watch, you'll see it. Sounds are geometric. When they were finding in the Cymatics, in these somatic experiments, higher notes would have more intricate patterns on these metal plates, right? Like a higher frequency, when driven into that plate, and the plate's vibrating at this higher frequency, it's a more intricate pattern. Really interesting. So then you think about, when I was reading, they brought up ultrasound. Ultrasound is such a high frequency that we can't even hear it. And how intricate could the shapes be when they're coming from an ultrasonic source? It's really high, like so high that you can't hear it anymore. So that's super interesting. Could the ultrasonic lead to medicinal uses? Apparently so. A gentleman by the name of Dr. Rife, I think this was about 100 years ago or so, maybe 115. He said everything vibrates. He found the frequency of a disease cell and would throw that frequency back at the diseased cell. Okay? Which is very interesting. And apparently what he was doing when he was kind of directing this frequency at these cells, they would disappear. It was so long ago and kind of like wasn't very respected at the time, so I wasn't able to find any kind of like proof that this worked, but it would make sense to me. Just putting it out there. I'm not saying that I believe it or not, but it's interesting. It's something cool to think about and kind of see if we can further it today, right? But unfortunately, Dr. Rife died penniless and bitter because nobody would take him seriously. American Medical Association, Department of Public Health, FDA, shut him down. Side note, American Medical Association is funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, or at least it was at the time, Rockefeller. Just kind of interesting stuff. You think for yourself. Okay, some final thoughts here. Matter can be nothing more than a symbolic description of the unseen physical and metaphysical forces which form it. When talking about time space in that order, matter is a wave, or it's that's how it manifests. And then when you're talking about space time, matter is particles. I don't understand this stuff too much, but it's about to make a little more sense by how we apply it to music or sound. The geometry that forms... Okay, here we go. Particles are held in place by standing waves of geometry. Okay, that is matter. This idea of these freezing waves. The geometry that forms is dependent upon frequency, wavelength, and the harmonics of the waves. So, I don't know, man. I mean, they say that we're crystalline structures. You think of a crystal, it's like this perfect thing. Think of a diamond, it's like this frozen ash. And something about it's so interesting to me. It just feels right. It's like you vibrate this thing and it becomes perfect. I think we have some kind of parts to us that are kind of like antennas. So we vibrate our antenna, fix it, tune it to the great beyond, get a better connection. And you know, sometimes that might be all we need to do for a while, or a certain period in our lives, is just to tune. You don't gotta lift yet, just tune for a while. I think I'm talking to myself. I tried to lift too early. I didn't tune right, you know? No, it's never too early to lift. Sound is invisible, yet carries structure. It exerts force on physical reality. The wave structure is a 3D platonic geometry that we were talking about earlier with those 5 platonic structures. Vibrations create geometry. It's a universal phenomenon. Boom. 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 Say it one more time. Vibrations create geometry. It's a universal phenomenon. I don't know what to tell you guys. That's it. I think that is enough yammering for today. Got about 15. I'll play you out with some good stuff. I'll go from there. Love, you're listening to Music 4 on Miami Community Radio. My name is Chris Hurst. Thank you. Govinda, J. Alice Coltrane. Sacred words. Sacred codes. Otis by the Durruti Column.
The second season I am to know. You are the sunlight in my growing. So little warmth I've felt before. It isn't hard to feel me glowing. I watched the fire that grew so low.
Closing it out with the legend Laraji. Hare Jaya Jaya Rama 2. I wanted to close out with this because Laraji is being brought by the great gentleman at Choral Morphologic to the Miami Beach Band Shell on May 21st at 7 p.m. And it's going to be, he's going to perform Aqua Garden Flow, a new piece of music composed to the films of Choral Morphologic. As stated by the Brother Dan, seems like the show of the year to me too. Thank you so much. I love you very much. Bless you. Stay up. Keep it going. And keep it locked. We got DJ Deep Cleansing coming right after this. 7 o'clock. Honey, honey, honey. Honey, honey, honey. Honey, honey, honey. Honey, honey, honey. Miami Community Radio.